When many people are working on addressing their core muscles, they're talking about their abdominals. Those four muscles that are in the front, so that includes the rectus abdominis, which is the long one, the transverse abdominis, which goes from side to side, and the obliques, which come in at those angles in order to strengthen their core. They're talking about strengthening their abdominals. However, particularly for the ladies, we're not just going to talk about those core muscles today. We're going to talk about all of your core muscles. You see, for women, we have a wider pelvis, which makes it a little bit more difficult for everything to stack up on top of, and also means that we have got to increase the hip muscle strength if we're going to be talking about core strength. So we not only want to work on our abdominals and our low back, which are considered more of the typical core exercises, we want to work on our hips as well as our pelvic floor. The truth of the matter is the abdominals, the pelvic floor, and the low back all function together directly to create our core musculature. And if there's dysfunction in one, then there is going to be dysfunction in the other too. And a lot of people will come in and they'll have like low back pain and they'll not understand why we're doing pelvic floor exercises or abdominal exercises for their low back pain, but it's all connected, and this triangle comes together to support your body, which begs the question of why are we working on the hip muscles then? Well, particularly for women with those wider hips, it's important to make sure that the hip muscles are nice and strong so it supports that pelvic bowl, because that is what the spine is going to line up on and allow all the muscles to contract correctly. Particularly, we're going to be working on gluteus medius, which is the big muscle on the side of your hip, as well as gluteus maximus, which is the big muscle that's on the back of your hip. The gluteus medius is the one that helps keep our hips stable when we're walking. So I understand that catwalk type of walk where you're moving your hips back and forth may look great on the catwalk. However, it's not great in daily activity. What we want to do is actually keep our pelvis more stable to decrease stress on our abdominals, our pelvic floor, and our low back. That's why we include gluteus medius. The reason why we include gluteus maximus is because it is super important to make sure that we got strong glutes in order to propel our bodies forward. And unfortunately, as women, we tend to work more on the muscles on the front and not as much on the muscles on the back, and that gluteus maximus often gets ignored. The one muscle that we're not going to actually work on today is the low back muscles or the lumbar paraspinals. The reason why is because most of the women that I meet do not actually have a weakness in their low back. Most commonly, they have too much tension and they actually need to be doing things like stretching their low back muscles. So we're not going to be working directly on strengthening our low back muscles today as we work on our core. I understand they are part of the core and they are important, but for most people I meet, their low back muscles are tight, but they're not actually weak. All right, ready? Here we go. First off, we're going to deal with the abdominals. So again, there's four abdominal muscles. That's why they're called the abdominals. You've got the rectus, which is the long one, the transversus, which is the wide one, and then you've got the obliques, which come in diagonally. Now, some people will say, well, you can work this muscle without working that muscle. The truth of the matter is, when it comes to the abdominals, they all work together. It's just which one is working the most. Now, the thing is, when you're in daily life, you want to make sure that all of them are working equally, because that's what they're designed to do. So although you may be focusing on one in the gym, it's important for daily life and for your core strength that they're all equally strong. Ready to work on some abs? Let's go. So first off, we want to make sure that we're actually engaging all of the abdominals as we're doing these exercises. So I like to start with some deep breathing with an abdominal contraction. So you're going to take a deep belly breath in through your nose. Blow out like you're blowing out a birthday candle. And then doing that contraction at the end, which not only brings those abdominals closer to the table, but lifts your pubic symphysis up towards your breastbone. So you should feel a very gentle tilting. Now, we are not trying to cause this huge pelvic tilt down here. We're not even trying to cause a flattening of the lumbar spine with this. What we're trying to cause is a tightening of those muscles while still maintaining that neutral pelvis of the spine. This can be really difficult, and if you're struggling with feeling this either in your brain or with your hand, then I want you to stay here until you get a clear understanding of how to contract these abdominal muscles, including the lower abdominals, while you're doing the breathing exercise. Now, once you've gotten that, we want to start challenging that a little bit. My favorite thing to do is the Pilates 100. So what we're going to do is get into the position. You're going to beat your arms quickly. We're going to breathe in for 5 and out for 5. And if you do that for a total of 10 times, that's 100. 5 plus 5 is 10. 10 times 10 is 100. So to get into a position for that, we're going to do that deep breath. Engage those abdominals. We're going to start with our knees bent while you're learning how to do this exercise. Lift up with our bodies. We're going to be in for 5, out, in, out, in, out. Now, after you've done 10 repetitions of that, you should feel your abdominals really well engaged. If you feel like that's not really enough challenge for me, what you can do is you can straighten out your legs instead of keeping them bent, and that will increase the challenge. All right, ladies, now it's time for my favorite pelvic floor exercise, which is the deep hip internal and external rotators, aka windshield wipers. So to do this, we're going to be laying on our back with our knees and our feet hip width apart. We're going to keep our heels in position, and we're going to slide our metatarsal heads. So the metatarsal heads are the base of the toes. We're going to pretend like I have like these really long toes here. The base of the toes towards each other. Now we want to keep our toes nice and relaxed while we do this. We're not trying to lift up. If you try to lift up your toes or scrunch your toes, what you'll notice is increased stress through the calf. And the goal is to actually get the hip muscles working. Then we're going to switch positions. We're going to put our knees and our feet together, and keeping our heels together, we're going to slide those metatarsal heads apart. And here's what that looks like. All right, so you've got your feet and your knees hip width apart. Keeping your heels apart, you're going to slide your metatarsal heads, again, the base of the toes, towards each other, and then straight forward, towards each other, and straight forward. Notice my toes are not lifting up. We're not doing this or this. Oh, ow, actually that hurt my foot. That's why you don't want to do that. You're just sliding those metatarsal heads towards each other. You're going to do 15 repetitions of this. Then you're going to slide your feet and your knees together, and you're going to slide those metatarsal heads apart. Now, as you'll notice, I have way less motion in this direction, and that's true for 99% of people. If you happen to have increased motion going this direction, good on you. Most people have less motion going this direction, and that's fine. Just remember, you don't want to be lifting those toes up to try to get more motion. That causes a lot of pain in the calf, and it's not going to be the point of this exercise. Again, you're going for 15 reps. 2 sets of 15 reps for that exercise. All right, now it's time to get to that gluteus medius, that muscle that is right here on the side of the hip. For some people, when they're doing this exercise, they actually like to keep their hand right there so they can feel that muscle contracting and relaxing. What you're going to do is you're going to bend both knees. So your bottom knee is going to stay bent so that you have that nice stability. Your top leg is going to go straight down. Now you're going to kind of point your toes down and your heel up a little bit. This will help to emphasize that gluteus medius just a little bit more. And then you're going to lift up towards the ceiling as high as you can, and then rest all the way down. A lot of people don't like to actually rest, and they stay in that contracted position during the whole exercise. But I definitely recommend, ladies, that you let it rest. Get that, we call it a micro rest, so it just shuts off for just a second before going again. And again, you should feel that muscle contracting right underneath your hand. What can happen sometimes is that people will roll this top hip back. Then you'll start using more of the psoas muscle or your hip flexor, and you can feel that right in there. And that's a totally different exercise, working on a totally different muscle. So put that hand right on top of that hip, keep that hip rolled forward, lead with your heel. That will help to make sure that you're getting that gluteus medius. The goal with this one is 2 sets of 20. However, for some people, they can't do it with correct posture up to the number 20. So just do as many as you can with correct posture, and then work your way up to 20. Okay, it's time to work on that booty. So we're going to work our gluteus maximus. There's lots of different ways to do this. I'm going to discuss some different techniques and why you might choose one over the other. All right, so first one I like to start people off with is pressing their hip bones, or those bones that are right on the front of their hips, into the table. I like to have them bend their knee with their foot flat, and then I want them to lift up using their glutes, so those big butt muscles, as if they're trying to put their foot straight on the ceiling. Usually in this case, most people will really feel that glute activation really well, and we're going for 2 sets of 20. Now, if that seems too easy for you, you want a little bit more of a challenge, then go ahead and straighten that leg. Again, those hip bones are pressing in front of you, keeping that leg nice and straight. You're going to lift up using the glute and then rest down. Now, the challenge with this one is it's a little bit easier to do it with your hamstring, which is the back of your thigh, as opposed to your glute. So you have to determine, do I get more glute with this one, or do I get more glute with this one? Whichever one gets you more glute activation, that's the one you want to use. Now, a lot of people like to do glute exercises here, and you can do both of those with the knee bent or the leg straight in this position. However, if you're going to do that, I want to make sure that we don't have a lot of wiggle while we're doing it. So in this case, you would really want to stabilize with those abdominals. Make sure you're holding that good position before you lift up with that leg, and then you do those press-ups in that position. Or you can do it again with your leg straight. It becomes way more of a challenge to make sure that you're keeping those abs engaged, because what we don't want, this is what we don't want, is this. That's not working your glute, and it's putting a lot of stress on your low back. So make sure, if you want to do it in this position, make sure you're keeping those abdominals engaged. So when you lift up with that glute, it's still a glute exercise, as opposed to a low back arching exercise, which is no good for your body and no good for your low back. All right, there it is. Core exercises that are safe for women to do and also cover all aspects of your core. So not only do you get your abdominals, but you get your pelvic floor and your hips as well. And for women, that is critically important. You want to make sure you're balanced all the way through. If you suffer with tension in your low back, but you don't have any low back pain or any disc dysfunction, you could also add in some stretches to your low back to complete this program. If you're interested in finding out more about how your core is connected and the different areas of your body all work together, I'm going to recommend you check out my book, Movement is Life, where we discuss how all these different areas of your body are connected and work together.